And welcome back to another episode of Massholes with Mikes. Not college basketball, college football today. I know this is normally the college basketball crew. I was talking a little bit pre-show with these guys, Kyle, Pat, and Davis, that we hadn't recorded any sort of college football content since around the winter of 2019. So that would be around 2.5 years since the last time we talked about this. But hey, we're back, and what an off season for us to talk about. We don't really have to recap it. I'm sure if you guys are clicking on this video, you probably know about all the madness. But I guess a quick summary, realignment happened. USC's heading to the Big Ten along with UCLA in the next couple of years. Head coaches aplenty moving around, including Kyle's former coach, Lincoln Riley, heading to USC. Yes, as Kyle, gestures, I guess appropriately, honestly, the way that he deserted. And Brian Kelly going to OSU. A bunch of transfers as well, including Jordan Addison and Caleb Williams. But without further ado, we are going to start, first off, with the playoff field that we have. I think that there's a couple of different ways that we can go, and we have some more topics to get into later. But the playoff four might be the easiest one to start with, because I think that we all have at least a couple of the same teams, except for maybe Pat. Pat might be a little bit of a wild card. So
he still believes in Nebraska.
He does, after that week 1 loss in Dublin. So without further ado,
mistakes.
He's on the Vandy train.
Let's say we're gonna get a Desmond Howard style bracket out of Pat.
It's gonna be wild. Kyle, okay.
Me later.
How about we do this? Do we want to go, everyone does their 1 seed, or one person does their 4, and then the next person does their 4? What works better for you guys? Do we care?
I think we should the 1 seed idea.
All right.
Okay, that's fine. All right, so without further ado, 1 seeds. Pat, go.
Oh, Bama.
Kyle?
It's Bama. I won't expound upon it. If you guys feel like expounding upon it, you can.
Yeah, it's
Davis?
Alabama.
It's
I mean,
Alabama.
I think the conversation is really between it's going to be them or Georgia, and it's whoever wins the SEC championship game. And I think that Georgia lost a lot of their talent over the offseason. And, I'm not sure if they'll be able to replenish it all, but they're still going to be, they're still going to be nasty. But, I think Bama's more in line to claim that this year.
Davis, you said Bama as well?
Yeah.
It's not even close. I also have Alabama. You have the best offensive and best defensive
college
player
football
in the country. What do you want? I know Saban called it a rebuilding year last year. It wasn't. They still made the national title game, and they're bringing back Will Anderson and Bryce Young. So, what do you want?
It's because they lost the national title game. That's what made it a rebuilding year.
Exactly. Okay, number 2. Let's go in reverse order here. Davis, who's your number 2 seed?
I got Ohio State. I think they're going to win the Big Ten. I think they're going to take it back from Michigan this year. They probably don't go undefeated just with how chaotic. I think a lot of us are anticipating the year to go, but I still think they're the best team in the Big Ten.
Kyle?
I also had Ohio State as my number 2.
All right, Pat?
I have Georgia as my number 2.
Interesting.
I believe in the SEC this year. Georgia's been there a bunch.
That's a hot take.
I think they can get to 2.
All right,
my 3 and 4 are long shots, so I have to put them in.
For what it's worth, if you guys have not listened to Pat in the past, he is by no means an SEC fan. We all do hate the Blue Bloods. By and large, there are some exceptions, obviously, but especially when it comes to March Madness.
Ohio State is not on.
Exactly. Oh, okay, so interesting. Nice foreshadowing there. I also have Ohio State as my number 2 seed, though. I know we were talking about it before. I think there are 2, juggernauts in the country this year. It's Bama, it's Ohio State, and it's everybody else. You got Jackson Smith and Jigba, C.J. Stroud, and I'm blanking on their running back. Travion Henderson is their running back. All 3 of them combined, it's going to be the new triplets. And it'll be... So I saw some people saying this may be Ohio State's best offense ever, and that's considering what we've seen in the past from some of these offensive that have really churned out the points. Including last year's, to be honest. Last year's Ohio State offense was still really good. You had Garrett Wilson and Olave. This one might be the best one. We'll have to see it to believe it, but it could be a loaded Buckeyes squad. All right, number 3 seed. I'm going to start with Kyle because I haven't started with you yet. Who do you have?
Georgia.
Really? Okay. Why?
Because they're not going to beat Bama in the title game, so they can't be the 1 seed.
So
and
you think it's going to be them 1-2 heading into the SEC championship? Georgia's going to lose, and they got to bump them down by default.
Pretty much, yeah. I think the SEC because I think that I think Ohio State can probably also be undefeated this year. I mean, maybe with a little bit of the chaos, but I feel like the only teams that are going to get a little bit of leniency when they lose are generally SEC teams. So I think that's fair. That's how it's going to shake up.
I'm going to go next, and I actually have Clemson as the 3rd seed. I think they're going to smoke the ACC. It's going to come down to them and Miami in the ACC title game, and I think that Clemson's going to win. I saw something that said they have like 3 or 4 top 10 recruits in the country on their defensive line this year. They're going to be the best defense in the nation. And I'm going to bet on a DJ comeback season. It's not going to be like Heisman worthy, but he's got to be better than he was last year. He just got off on the wrong foot when facing Georgia. And I think that people are kind of underrating this Clemson team. I'm going to get into it a little bit later. Maybe we'll see. But they finished, I want to say, 9-3 last year. And people acted like it was just a disaster season. But they still went to a bowl. They still won the bowl. I'm going to say that it was more of an aberration than a pattern for Dabo and company. As much as I hate him, I think he's going to be the number 3 seed.
It was a true rebuilding year.
Yeah.
Unlike Saban's fake one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Pat.
My number 3 seed is actually Utah. I
Okay.
think that they're a really strong team, and that the West Coast isn't going to live up to the hype. Little foreshadowing with my USC beliefs coming up. But I think that, Oregon, USC, UCLA, they're not it this year, and I think Utah could steamroll their way through the West into the 3 seed.
I think they have one. I think their hardest game is USC at home this year, though. So USC has to go into Utah and try and win. It's not a bad pick. There's a reason. I want to say they're 6 or 7 right now in the AP poll. So there's a reason that a lot of people love them. And that Rose Bowl last year against Ohio State was fantastic. So if they make the playoff, they'd be the first Pac-12 team since Washington.
Washington.
Jake Browning.
Which is hilarious.
It is funny. The Pac-12 has gotten just stomped the last couple of years. They haven't even sniffed. I guess the closest one was the Hurts year for Oklahoma, where Oregon had
Utah.
it and they lost the Pac-12 title game to Utah, right? Or is it opposite? Maybe an opposite.
I think Utah had it and Oregon beat them.
Yeah, because I think Herm Edwards, Arizona State beat Oregon that year, and that kind of knocked them out with Herbert. But they would be the first college football playoff team since Jake Browning to be there for the Pac-12, which would be funny. Davis, you're number 3.
Promptly.
Sorry, Kyle.
Yeah,
what?
no, I also got Georgia as my number 3. And it's funny, they're number 3 in the AP poll going into the season, and odds are that nothing stays consistent throughout the year this year, but they might be number 3 all the way through, because I'm with Kyle. I think they probably go undefeated on their schedule and lose to Alabama in the SEC championship. They avoid Bama in the regular season, and honestly, their hardest game is probably Oregon week 1, which I still think they win.
Oh, they're going to stomp.
You
know who's starting for Oregon now?
A lot, but
you know who's starting for Oregon at quarterback now?
the legend Bo Nix.
Bo Nix. Wild. I will say, one of the things I've seen about Georgia is, did you know they haven't accepted a single transfer player this year? Or in the transfer portal? Haven't accepted a single one. Because Kirby Smart looked at it and said, look how many 5-stars I have on my roster. I don't need any of these guys trying to transfer. Screw that. They also have a guy that I want the Patriots to eventually draft in Brock Bowers, their tight end. He's an absolute machine. He's incredibly quick, and he just trucks guys. So I think Stetson Bennett will be all right, who's returning again. We'll see how that goes. But I Georgia as a 3 seed for 2 of us, and then Pat, you had Utah. And then I had Clemson. So a little bit of parity here, but this is where it gets fun, because the 4 seed, I have a feeling that none of us are going to agree on. So Davis, I'm going to let you start here.
Well, I'm going to back up Pat over here. I got Utah as my 4th seed. They lose some big guys on defense. Devin Lloyd comes to mind, but I think Cam Rising's like a dark horse Heisman guy if everything comes together. I think they got 3 really good receivers, great running back. Whittingham always manages to put together, a complete roster. And I think this year more than any other, they have the expectations, but then also all around. I don't think they have really any gaping holes this year. The USC's probably their biggest opponent, but I still think they beat them this year. Now, I do think there's probably 1, maybe 2 losses on the schedule. So they're probably going to end up having to get in with 2 losses. So we'll see how crazy the country gets. Truly, the only thing I think could get in their way is if the committee's maybe a little picky about them over in the Pac-12, taking a couple losses. But I think we're going to have another chaotic season, and I think they're a complete team. So I'm going with Utah.
I would like the chaotic season. I'm all for chaos. Kyle, who is your number 14?
I also had Utah as mine. I think it's a good year for them, and I agree with Davis in the fact that I think it's going to be a little chaotic. Now, I don't think that they would be a 2-loss team to get in. Like I think like theoretically like a 2-loss Ohio State or a 2-loss Georgia could make it in. I mean, Bama's not going to lose 2 games, but no, I think the Pac-12 is going to be stronger this year, just because you have USC who are on the come up. I don't think USC will be close to the playoff, but I think like they're still going to be a good and a competitive team. So a win against them will look good, and Oregon is ranked pretty high to start this year. So I think this is the year the Pac-12 finally gets it done.
Pat.
Here comes the hot takes. My number 4 seed is NC State.
Nice.
They have
spicy.
a really good defense. A quarterback, it's his 4th year on campus. He's a redshirt junior. His 4th year on campus. Jersey boy, so you have to respect the grind there. And I don't like the ACC at all. I think Pitt is overrated. I think Clemson's overrated. I think Miami's overrated. I think they all suck. And I think NC State is going to go undefeated and be the 4 seed.
Miami is always overrated.
I agree with the Pitt one. I think Miami's probably going to go like 10-2 with Cristobal, and I have them losing the ACC title game, so that's going to be one of them. I know, Davis, you said you were kind of high on Miami as well. Obviously not high enough for the playoff, but...
No, I think you're right. It's probably like a 10-2 season. I'm just fascinated with Miami because, one, out of all the crazy coach moves this year, I think Cristobal probably has the best odds for immediate success, just the way he's set up. But also, I just feel like Miami, out of like everyone in the country, has a ceiling and a floor. Like, I feel like borderline playoff is their ceiling, but like it could easily be sub 500 and fall apart. So like, I just don't know that many teams in the country that I feel like there's a legitimate range that large for. So I'm very interested to see how they do in Cristobal's first year.
I tell you what, one of the other ones would be is Texas. Texas has a very wide variance as well. Some people are predicting that they go like 3-9, and the other ones are predicting that they get 10 wins. Hold that thought about immediate success though for a rookie coach, because
like former.
I also have a new coach. He's not a rookie coach, but he's at a new program, and I have him making the playoff. Is anyone guessing where I'm going to go with this? Because I've been smiling like an idiot for like the last 12 minutes.
If you say USC, I'm going to get on the train and ring you.
Are you saying Brian
Kelly?
Kelly?
Go stamp your ticket there, Pat. I'm taking USC as the 4 seed. Now, hear me out on this before. God. Before I talk here, or before I explain. Just hear me out. So, first of all, Caleb Williams is probably going to make it to New York as a Heisman finalist, just for the fact that he's in the West. And we know that people have... whenever someone's good out West, the committee tries to kind of pander to them a little bit, especially if it's USC. So I think they're actually going to overrate SEC to get them into the playoff because they want to. Yeah, so as I was saying, the hardest game on USC's schedule is going to Utah. I think that they might be able to pull that out, and if they do, they will have the inside track, because the games that they will play, beating a Utah team that's probably going to be ranked in the top 10, beating a Notre Dame team at the end of the year that's probably going to be pretty highly ranked as well. You look at this, the USC, and more importantly, the Pac-12, which does blow. I think Oregon's going to blow this year. Washington State's probably not going to be that good, but I mean, I think that USC has the steps to get there. It's a matter of them putting it together and being able to win these games. But they have a road. I think they have an easier road than some of these other teams do. Notice I left Georgia off of my top 4. I don't think that they're going to make it this year. I think they're going to slip up and lose a stupid one like South Carolina a couple years ago.
Hot Rod.
Yeah, we don't talk about that. That's brutal. All right. Let's move on here. We'll do Heisman pretty quickly. Do you guys have just one, or do you guys have like a top 3 that you wrote out?
I just wrote one. I
That's
don't
fine.
really.
I mean, I have a top 3, but there's one I feel passionate about.
All right, Davis. So we'll let you lead here then.
We'll pick up on the USC train. I think Caleb Williams is winning the Heisman. I think unless there's a non-quarterback who breaks out, which is always a chance, we're going to be talking C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, Caleb Williams probably at the end of the year. Whereas I think we're all in consensus that those last 2 quarterbacks are probably going to be in the playoff, probably going to be on absolutely decked rosters. Alabama, at least, I know Ohio State has some questions, but Alabama will probably have a pretty good defense. I think if USC's going to make a run, they need like a 2019 Oklahoma with Kyler Murray kind of season, because they have question marks all over their defense. And they certainly have the talent to, but they're going to have to put up historic numbers on offense. And I just don't know if in their biggest games, they're going to be, blowing people out like maybe Alabama and Ohio State will. So I think Caleb Williams is going to be throwing a lot. So I think guys like Jordan Addison, Mario Williams, all those guys are going to be putting up big numbers for him. And so I think he's going to have to throw like 5,000-6,000 yards throughout the year if they want to be contending. And I think if he's just going to have the numbers because they're going to need him more.
Interesting. I think that what you just described is Lincoln Riley's teams to a T. Terrible on defense, have to outscore people by 1,000,000. So, yeah, the formula is there for Williams to win the Heisman, and I would also argue that would be the path for them to get to the playoff, because that's what Lincoln Riley has always brought to the playoff. A team loaded on offense can't stop a nosebleed, so we'll see. Kyle, your Heisman pick.
I mean, yeah, I have Williams too. I think part of it is mostly because I think he was debatably in the conversation last year, and he only played half the season, so like giving him a full year, and I agree with Davis. I don't think their offense is really going to be their issue. I think it's going to be their defense. I mean, like I'm not an Alex Grinch guy anymore. I saw with the way that the defense has played over the last couple of years, like I kind of realized like he's kind of soft, and the way that a lot of the players, like guys that have left, talked about him, saying that he was soft. Like I think he's not that great of a defensive guy, and maybe his style might work out in the Pac-12. I mean, wasn't that where he was a coordinator before? He was coordinator with Washington, right?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure.
Davis
Washington
would probably
State.
know more than I would. Okay.
I'm pretty sure is where he came from. Pretty sure that's where he came from. So, maybe he'll be better, but I think that, yeah, it's Caleb's going to be, I said this well before he even stepped on the field for Oklahoma, but he's probably the most talented prospect I've ever seen. Like that's come through Oklahoma's ranks. So even more talented than Kyler Murray, I think. So I mean, I think he's going to be, he might not win it this year. He'll be in the contention for however many years he's in college, and he'll probably win at least one.
I'll go quick here, and I'll let Pat finish up. I got Will Anderson. I think the defense is going to kind of break through. First time since Desmond Howard. I like – or Charles Woodson or Desmond Howard? Charles Woodson, right? I
think it was Woodson, yeah.
Yeah, my brain's going all screwy at this point. I think that Will Anderson is the best player in the country, and I think he deserves to be drafted number 1 at next year's draft. I mean, the dude's an absolute wrecking ball. Watching him last year in the national title game scared the living crap out of me, because even after Bama's receivers kept dropping one by one, he still scared me because I didn't think Stetson Bennett was going to be able to get away from him at all. He was a wrecking crew in the SEC title game a couple of weeks before that, and I think that he is going to have, insert whatever numbers you want. He's going to be the force of that Alabama defense, and if they're going to go undefeated, I feel like you almost have to put him there. I have Stroud finishing second. I think 2 teams are going to go undefeated this year. It's going to be Ohio State and Alabama, and 2 guys from their teams are going to finish the top 2 in the Heisman voting. The reason I didn't go with Bryce Young is because he won it last year, and when was the last time someone won back-to-back Heisman? It's been a while. I can't remember one off the top of my head. So, yeah. Pat.
Yeah, I'm going with Dylan Gabriel, quarterback at Oklahoma. I think that team is going to...
Wow!
They're going to surprise a lot of people, and I think he's going to win it.
That is a wild thing. He just came out of nowhere with Dylan Gabriel.
You're going to feel like a fool when General Booty is starting in week 5.
Well,
is he on Oklahoma?
General Booty.
General Booty's on. Yeah, he's on
I didn't
Oklahoma.
know that.
Yeah, I forgot about it too until they posted a video on their Instagram. It was Dorm Tour with General Booty, and I was like, wait, what? Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
I forgot about that too. That's awesome.
I'm a believer.
I think he's probably like their third stringer.
Play better defense this year. They will with the coaching change, and I think they could actually lose one game this year. And if they have that narrative on their side, I think he's going to get some traction.
All right, so overrated and underrated. Let's start with overrated. Teams that you think are way too high. On the poll right now, just in general, you don't think they're going to finish where people have them projected. Pat, you can start. Most overrated team to you in college football this year.
Yeah, I sort of already addressed it earlier. I think USC is super overrated. I think in terms of the old Oklahoma teams that relied so heavily on offense and had almost no defense, it worked to a certain extent for them, but they were falling apart. And at the end of Lincoln Riley's tenure there, it became less and less effective, it was seeming. So I just think as that transitions over to USC, I could see this team losing 3-4 games pretty easily. And I think among like the cultural zeitgeist, people do not expect that at all.
Kyle.
And I think I agree, and I think I it's not necessarily going to be Lincoln Riley's fault. I think just the fact that it's a new team, he inherited a team that was terrible last year. Sure, they brought in a lot of talent, and he's a very good recruiter, but I think that it's going to take him a little bit to kind of iron out. Like I think next year they're going to be a wagon.
I
But
fully
this
agree.
but this year I think that there were a lot of people that were saying like they're like there were and I think the poll has them in a fair spot, like 14 is fair, but a lot of the hype I was seeing in the off season and then the build up to the season, people like they should be title favorites. It's like, guys, this team won 4 games last year, like, and they added a coach who is notoriously terrible in the clutch. Like they're gonna need a year to iron everything out a little bit.
He can build a great offense and he can recruit incredibly well, but he's been known to mismanage games down the stretch. And he hasn't been able to build the program yet, either by recruiting or instilling the offense that he really wants to in under a year.
They're still going to be good. Like I think that I can
absolutely.
see them losing like 2.
Losing 3-4 games does not mean you're a terrible team. I just don't think they're title contenders.
No, I see them losing probably like 2. Like I can imagine them losing to Notre Dame and Utah, which aren't shameful losses, and probably dumping on the bad teams, and then maybe slipping up against like a random team in there just because like it is Lincoln Riley. Like Kansas State, I'm pretty sure had a winning record against Lincoln Riley. So, it's going to happen. Yeah. I do have another overrated team though that I think.
Yep.
I think Michigan is slightly overrated. They're a top 10 team. I think they're riding on the coattails of last season because they were in the playoff last year. Like I don't think a lot of people have them as being a big time contender, but I just think that like I've never been a big believer in Harbaugh, not a big supporter of the khakis. But I think this whole thing they're doing where like, yeah, week 1 we're going to go with one quarterback, and then week 2 we're going to go with the other, and then we're going to evaluate it from there. It just seems like it just does not seem like a recipe for success at all. Like it just does not seem like khakis really has anything under control up there. And I think after last year, that kind of humiliating defeat kind of just was just like, yeah, you guys got there because Ohio State lost early on in the year to Oregon, and
Ohio State had just a terminally flawed defense.
Yeah, and I think that sure they were. Michigan is always just that team for me that's like, yeah, they're good, but they're not great. And I think that them being in the top 10, I can't imagine that they're going to end the season there.
I actually think that they're going to be. This is probably the best offense that he's ever had in terms of just pieces.
I was gonna say like. I don't know, Kyle. Like Jeremy said, I think that's one of the better offenses they had. Yes, the 2 quarterback thing's a little strange, but like, I mean, if your options are Cade McNamara and JJ McCarthy, like, I mean, that's a good problem to have. And like, I don't know. I get they lost a lot of game wreckers on defense, but like overall, that defense is still going to be pretty good.
That's going to be their
pretty
weakness.
Good still, though.
Yeah, if they end up getting knocked out.
I know, but like the perception is like, okay, their defense is going to decline, like, but that like, for Michigan, like that's maybe a little bit of a decline, but I mean that's still a fairly high quality Big Ten defense. And I mean,
they're losing to Rutgers.
I don't know. I think there's odds that they could still be 10-1 or 11-0 going into Ohio State at the end of the year.
Team of the year, Rutgers, Michigan.
What do you got, Davis, for your overrated team?
I'll keep it in the Big Ten. I got Michigan State. So they had a great season last year. Kenneth Walker went off. That was a great portal addition, but he's gone. Over half of their offensive line is gone. Yeah, their secondary was pretty bad last year as it is, and I don't really see a lot of upgrade coming. They lost a couple guys up front on the pass rush that already was a little suspect. I don't know. I feel like people are kind of like you guys were talking earlier with Pitt, like people are kind of taking what happened last year as the standard for how they're ranked in the preseason.
Desmond Howard.
Yeah, like I'm not going to say they're going to be below 500 or anything, but like I think the perception of them as a Big Ten contender to me is a little far-fetched. I think 8-4, things get really bad 7-5, but I don't think they're contending for the Big Ten by any stretch.
Say it with me, everybody. The most overrated team in the nation this year, especially right now, is Notre Dame. I don't know why in the world they're ranked number 5. Now, an argument could be made that if you look at like teams 6 through 15, I would also argue every single one of those teams is too high. But I'm going to pick on Notre Dame because old habits die hard, and I hate Notre Dame so much. Marcus Freeman has a tremendous amount of pressure put on him in his first season, and I think he's only like 35, 36. And I'm pretty sure this is a program that historically chews up and spits out rookie head coaches. And this is his first job ever as a head coach, let alone him coming in from somewhere else. This is his first job as a head coach anywhere. So, I mean, it remains to be seen. Maybe they'll figure it out. I have truly no idea who their starting quarterback is right now, because I know last year was Jack Cohn, which is also hilarious. I don't know who their guy is now. They're still an offensive line factory. Their defense is going to be all right, but again, the whole non-schedule thing does hurt them, and they have a big matchup coming up in week 1 next week that I'm not going to talk about because I think it may get brought up for the game of the year. So we're just going to move on real quick to underrated, and because I went last, I'll go first here. I think Oklahoma's a little bit underrated, but I think that one of you guys may talk about them. So I'm going to go with my other one, which is Clemson. I know Pat said that he didn't think Clemson was going to be that good. I mean, people just wrote off Dabo. And as much as just a snake oil salesman as that man, I'm going to teach your son how to play football and be a great human being. And then just coaches Deshaun Watson. So, we're just going to skip right over that, huh, Dabo?
I'm not a big Dabo guy. There's some other stuff.
I am not, exactly. I'm not the biggest Dabo guy as well, but the man can coach, on the field at least. So I'm going to see, I think that people are just writing them off. They're what, the 6th seed right now? Notre Dame's 5, Clemson 6, I believe, Utah 7. And that seems a little bit low. Are they 4? It might be 4.
Yeah, Clemson's number 4.
I'm pretty sure Clemson's 4, yeah.
Good. That's exactly where they should be. I have them finishing as the 3 seed. I have them being in the playoff ahead of Georgia this year, and I will die on that hill. I think that they will be good. They'll have a better start to the season than last year because they wanted to face last year was number 3 against number 5, Georgia and Clemson, first week of the season, which was an insane matchup. It was great. All the hype.
What was the final of that game?
7-3. 10-3, yeah. And the only touchdown was a pick 6. So
defense wins championships, baby.
Yeah, I mean, they had the greatest defense in the last, 30 years. That's the only reason that they won the title.
And they were facing the best defensive coordinator in football.
Who is now the head coach of?
Oklahoma.
Exactly. So, Kyle, who's your underrated team?
So I have 2. Oklahoma is not one of them. I can speak on Oklahoma if you want me to.
No.
But
do your pick.
I mean, I was just going to say, I think they're fairly rated. I think that their offense isn't fantastic right now. I think they're going to have a pretty good defense. I think it's good. It's going to be like with USC, except I think they're not as talented. There's growing pains they're going to have to go through. I think they could go I think they could lose 3 games this year. I don't want to go down the stretch and pick them, mostly because I don't want to say which teams they'll lose to. But I can imagine them slipping up against a bad team and then maybe losing Bedlam again and against Baylor or something like that. But they also could be really good. Who knows? I'm not really sure what to think of them offensively. I think defensively they're going to be pretty good. But my underrated teams, I guess they might not be the hottest takes, but I think Oregon's pretty underrated. I think that people might sleep on them because they were one of the teams that was caught in the shuffle of last year, which is why I really think this year is going to be a big chaos year because there's so much turnover that there are going to be so many different players and coaches that are going to be trying to get used to their new programs. And I think that it's just going to be a funky year. And I mean, I mentioned before we were recording that we could totally see a 2-loss team make it in there. Maybe a 2-loss Michigan, that their only losses being to Ohio State and then someone else, I don't know, could sneak in. Just a random team that has 2 losses could sneak in this year just because I think that the gap between Ohio State and Alabama and Georgia and the rest of the teams in college football is so large this year with all the turnover that we've seen that we could see something like that happen. And, if Oregon play a close game against Georgia and then they beat Utah in the title game, that's going to be a pretty good resume right there. You really never know what's going to happen. If they win out after losing to Georgia, that's a pretty damn good resume, depending on what Georgia ends up doing through the rest of the season. And the other one I have is kind of a homer pick for me. I don't think they're going to do anything crazy, but I think South Carolina is going to be good. I like Spencer Rattler going to new pastures. Hopefully their offensive line will be able to block for him because I'm still a believer in Rattler. I think still think he's a good player. I think he just was dealt a really tough hand, and they made the smart decision in moving on from him last year. It was a hard decision. I think, a kid with his talent, you might want to see him get another shot, but it was just not going to work. And I think that, new fresh offense, he's going to have his boy, he's going to have Stogner with him. Maybe they'll be able to get something cooking for him and win a couple good games. Maybe they'll beat Georgia. Who knows?
I think they face Clemson as well, so they could be real bracket wreckers if they really wanted to be. Pat.
Yeah, my underrated team this year, I'm going to the Big Ten. I like the Minnesota Golden Gophers. They had the number 6 defense.
Davis is very happy about that.
One of my two.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Nice.
They had the number 6 defense in the country last year. They're bringing back most of their guys. They've got a 5th-year quarterback in Tanner Morgan, who's not great, but it's his 5th year, so he knows what he's doing.
It's not college basketball, Pat.
Exactly. and notably, they do not play Michigan or Ohio State during the regular season, and thus they could smoke their way through the Big Ten if they beat Davis's overrated team in Michigan State and his team in Penn State.
Interesting pick. Some people do have Minnesota making it out of the Big Ten West to make it to Indy.
The Big Ten West is also just so wide open this year.
Especially after Nebraska lost. I mean, anything's possible.
Yeah,
They were the front runners.
The legend Scott Frost, man. But, I mean, Iowa's probably, like, as good as they were last year, which wasn't crazy, but pretty good. Wisconsin's not back. Yeah, and I like
they
all
still have
Pat's
Graham
reasons.
Mertz. Is he still there?
We'll be rowing the boat. I believe, Graham Mertz, I believe, is still the starting quarterback.
Yikes. I mean, I know I think they picked up a good transfer running back, which is all they need in Wisconsin. Just mow people down running the triple option.
All you need to do is be able to hand off the ball up in Wisconsin.
Yeah. Wisconsin is the only Big Ten West team that's ranked, I will say. So that's a fun take. I like that.
All right. And Davis, your underrated team.
All right. This one's going to seem out of left field, but I'm pretty passionate about this team.
Okay.
BYU is a top 15 team in the country. They had.
We don't like to see that, but also we like the outside the box pick.
After 2020, everyone thought, like, okay, they had all cupcakes, they're overrated. Zach Wilson's off the NFL, like they're gonna crash and burn next year. They did not crash and burn the next season. They went 5-0 against the Pac-12. They finally beat Utah, which was big. Zach Wilson's replacement, Jaron Hall, actually played very well. They returned 8 starters on offense, the entire offensive line. They are number 1 in returning production on defense in the country. I think, they're not a playoff team. No one's going to be talking about that, but they got Baylor, Oregon, Notre Dame, and Arkansas.
Yeah, Arkansas to start the year, too.
I think they could knock off 2 or 3 of those teams.
You said Baylor and Notre Dame are the other two? You have to assume, at least right now, isn't Baylor ranked like 11th or 12th? Something like that?
They're 10.
I believe they're 10.
You go through the year, these teams will all be ranked at the top 25 at the time that they will play them, because I don't think Baylor and Notre Dame are going to fall out unless Baylor has like a truly horrid year, which could happen, but I don't see it happening right now. You're right. BYU could finish in the... You said top 15? I'll do you one further. If things fall right for them, you could argue a top 8 finish.
I was gonna say, Davis, like, I didn't know their schedule was like that. Like, theoretically, if they were to go undefeated, like, would they not be in the playoff? Like,
right?
They'd have a
like
massive
that's a stacked schedule. I don't think any other team has a schedule like that.
And granted, I don't think they will go undefeated, but I think there's a very good chance they could be keeping 1 or 2 other teams out of the playoff.
I like that.
Kind of fun. I do love chaos. Well, they have some Mormon magic. Who knows?
All right, and wrapping us up here, the game that we want to see the most this year, the game to watch, and Pat, I'm going to let you start.
Yeah, I'm going to start with the obvious answer. It's October 8th. It's Texas A&M at Alabama. 1 versus 6, and after the Jimbo Fisher, Nick Saban firestorm in the media this offseason, I mean, that just has every narrative under the sun. I'm going to have to watch that one.
Interesting that you went with that one and not another Texas team facing Alabama.
No, I'm here for the goss. I'm here for the drama.
That's going to be a bloodbath.
I'm here for the how's the highlights. I'm an NBA guy. I want the drama.
The beef. No, I get it.
And that's the one.
Kyle.
All-time press conference for sure.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, my game to watch this year is going to be Texas A&M versus UMass.
Bringing that up again.
I cannot believe
Rutgers, Boston College.
I cannot. But I didn't know that was on the schedule. I cannot believe that is a game that is scheduled for this year. That is going to be that's going to be 99-0. Oh my Lord! But no, that's not my actual choice.
Do we know what the spread is on that game?
All I saw is that ESPN said that UMass has a 1.3% chance of winning, which I thought was very generous. No, my two actual games to watch this year are somewhat biased, but I think Oklahoma, Texas is going to be fun this year because both these programs are in kind of an interesting limbo. And especially normally when they face each other, it's early on in the year and one of them's like maybe 4-1, the other's 5-0. And if that's the case, if maybe they're both undefeated at that point, like, well, I guess they won't be. Texas is going to have one loss because they're going to lose week 1. I mean, even if I was a Texas fan, I would be saying they're going to lose week 1.
Is it week 1 or week 2?
So, 5-0.
Because they play. It's not this coming week. Texas and Alabama play the next week.
Okay, so week 2 then. Yeah. But it could be 5-0 versus 4-1, which that's pretty big stakes because Oklahoma would need to theoretically keep their undefeated record alive if they want to stay in the playoff hunts, and a big win for losing to Alabama isn't necessarily the most shameful thing in the world. So if Texas are 4-1 and they can knock off Oklahoma, that will help them if they're trying to make a push for the playoffs. So I think that will be an important one. And then in a very similar vein, I think if Utah and Oregon play each other this year in the final, I think that would be an amazing game to watch, because I think that both those programs, if they get to that stage, they'll have a lot to play for. And I think that theoretically, if Oregon, let's say, play a close game against Georgia and then make the final after winning out, and Utah are undefeated at that point, like I think the winner of that game could theoretically be in the would be in the playoff, and it would be big for the Pac-12. So those are my two.
Davis.
To close the year on November 26th, I'm looking at USC and Notre Dame. That is one of the most iconic rivalries in college football. Neither of those teams have been able to stay good at the same time in over a decade. So I'm really looking forward to both those teams going at it. I think collectively, those are two programs.
They both have 3 losses.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? But I just think collectively, those are two schools that the four of us all, I'm pretty sure, we don't really like.
No.
But I think when those schools are, as much as I hate to say it, when USC and Notre Dame are good, college football is better. Those are just iconic programs. So I'm really hoping that at least they can stay like 9-2 heading into that game, because that would be a lot of fun.
Yes, Kyle.
I disagree. I like when they're both bad.
Do you notice that? I'm sorry. Now I'm going down a Notre Dame hole again. Do you notice that anybody who roots for Notre Dame just never went to the school? It's not like they know anybody that went to the school. They're just Notre Dame fans because it's Notre Dame, and it's like, dude, you guys
because their grandpa was Irish.
I guess. You guys stink.
I do kind of like the energy of Notre Dame facing BYU this year in a nice holy war matchup.
Yeah, loser has to completely leave their religion.
Loser
I was gonna say has to take the Crusades path, but isn't allowed to kill anybody and see if they survive.
I'm bummed because this year I'm really high on both Utah and BYU, and of course the Holy War, the actual rivalry, the Holy War doesn't happen this year.
Yeah,
it's not on the schedule, and I'm bummed.
That's a real shame.
Is that not a thing they do every year?
I thought it was, but they're not on each other's schedules. I was putting together BYU. I was like, man, look at that resume they could have, but Utah, BYU do not match up this year.
I'm gonna say, Davis, though, your earlier chat now has me really rooting that BYU are undefeated by the end of this year, because I just because think about how we've talked about all this chaos that's been going on that could theoretically be happening, and after the offseason that we just had, wouldn't that not just be perfect?
It would be.
I mean, just and then watch them just get absolutely thumped by Alabama in the first round, obviously. But I mean,
that's going to happen to anybody, though. It doesn't matter what team you insert there.
No, it's true. Hey, I mean, Cincinnati didn't necessarily get thumped last year. I mean, their offense got thumped, but their defense put up a pretty good fight.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining the outrage, though. You take let's say BYU goes 11-1. It's a close loss at Oregon, and they're up against a 10-2 Georgia who lost the SEC title game, and they put in a Georgia over a BYU. Mm-hmm. The collective just chaos that fans would have, it would be a meltdown. But.
And then I'm thinking Ohio State loses to Minnesota in the Big Ten title game, and so then they're up in the edge.
Chaos.
An undefeated Minnesota, but a one-loss.
We won Bama, BYU, Minnesota, and NC State.
Yes, sir.
Jesus.
all of which are undefeated teams, and Alabama just goes, okay.
They're back there like,
Let's bench Bryce Young for the first game. We'll see what happens in the final.
Alabama just gets there like they're just feeding those teams into the sausage maker. Just
All right, my game to watch is a game that is simply called The Game. It's in the shoe this year. Michigan and Ohio State at the end of the year, as good as last year's was, because it was the first time that Khakis has actually won one of those, makes the stakes for this year that much more interesting for me. I know that there's going to be a lot of hate going back and forth, and obviously after Haskins had like 7 touchdowns in that game last year, we'll see what happens this year. As I think me and Davis said, this Michigan offense is going to be loaded, but Ohio State's offense is going to be equally as disgusting with higher end talent. But if both of these teams come into this matchup undefeated, which they could, can you imagine just because that's also the one that starts your rivalry weekend. You watch this is so it's going to be this. Thanksgiving night is going to be the Bills and Cowboys or something like that, and Patriots are going to play the Vikings. Friday is going to be USA England World Cup Black Friday matchup. Saturday you're going to start with Michigan, Ohio State could both be undefeated, transition into the Iron Bowl, and then have another game at night. That 3-day stretch is going to be absolutely phenomenal. Like, I think it's Cowboy.
And you're going to be working through all of it.
I'm hopefully going to get Thanksgiving off. I'm praying because I know that I'm automatically on Black Friday. I already figured that out. I'm praying that I get that off, but we'll see. Anyway, I like Michigan and Ohio State. Texas Bama for the eyeballs is going to be good. The game's not going to be that good, but I will say if Texas keeps it close and somehow hits the ceiling of what they're supposed to do, which is like a 10-win season, and has a close loss to Alabama on there, people will start to make the argument. And we're not going to want to hear it, but they will. And then the other one that I'm looking forward to, purely for selfish reasons, week 1, I want to see Ohio State take Notre Dame to the woodshed. Please. Just beat the ever-loving crap out of them. I beg.
I have one other one to add to the list, and it's kind of outside the box and not necessarily game to watch, for how exciting it might be, but game to watch possibly in person. That could be fun. The Army-Navy game is going to be at Gillette this year.
Are you going to that?
That could be pretty fun. Theoretically, I probably have a good chance of having a ticket.
I think it would be really fun. That's definitely a bucket list one, the Army-Navy game.
I went to it last year. It was really fun, and it's happening here in Foxborough this year. So if Davis, it might be kind of hard for you, but for us Boston folks, it's if you have a chance to go, I would definitely say go. It's a very unique experience.
All right. Any other final thoughts here as the season? Week 0 has already happened, but we're really getting into the weeds here. Week 1 coming up, big rivalry matchups. Utah and Florida, also an underrated one, depending on if Anthony Richardson can actually play. And obviously we talked about Oregon and Georgia. Week 1 is just going to be great. It really is, because it's going to feel nice. I've been waiting for pro football. Not pro football. I've been waiting for football, organized football, to come back for a while now. Doing these nights after nights of just MLB stuff has been really grating, so I'm happy that this stuff is back.
Hey, dark horse candidate this year. Really impressed with them in week 0. Vandy.
On top of the SEC.
Against what is expected to be the worst Hawaii team in history.
Yeah, well, they dropped the 60 burger on them, or
56 at least.
Either way, Davis, you have to put into the fact that they endured that grueling travel. They played in terrible conditions out in Hawaii. That should add to their resume for sure. All right. So
and I do believe that Vandy's new coach did say this is the best Vanderbilt team that's ever of all time, and they immediately went out and steamrolled someone. So
whoa.
They did drop a 60 burger, 63-10.
Get on the train or get off.
Get nervous, guys. As Vanderbilt's no longer a baseball school.
4 games this year. They're going to be the new Minnesota. Rutgers lose 4 games this year, and then they're going to be hot next year.
I like it. All right. So.
Cheers.
Thank you guys for listening in, and thank you guys for appearing on this. Hopefully we can do maybe something before bowl season. We'll see how it all works out. But for Kyle, Pat, and Davis, I am Jeremy saying have a good rest of your day, everybody.